Welcome in, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast presented by Full-Time Fantasy and the FFWC. Billy Muzio, your co-host, with my other co-host, Jody Smith, here for the Full-Time Fantasy Pod. And we are drinking, talking football again. And we're going to be talking through the NFC win totals. So what are you drinking tonight, Jody?
Well, I'm going with my favorite local brewery, the Spindle Tap. This is the Wrestling Move series. This is the one that was it's called Razor Double IPA, and it's got Razor Ramon on it, which was pretty funny. They released it, and then Scott Hall passed away like 2 days later. It was just terrible timing on their part. But I'm getting in the IPAs and the brew stuff while I can, because come May 2nd, 75, I'm doing a workout diet type plan. It's called Hard 75. So in addition to dieting and having to work out multiple times a day, I won't be able to have any alcohol for that 75 days. So
Whew, that's rough.
it's going to be rough for the podcast. You might have to get a new co-host after a couple of weeks, because it's going to be rough. But no, I need to reel it in. It's getting as much time as I spent, writing and all things over the winter. I started to pack on a little bit of weight, and I keep, coming up with excuses and reasonings. Like here, I've got a bachelor party coming up in less than 2 weeks, so that's where I just said, me and my friend who's an attorney, we just decided, all right, it's time we got to reel it in. So that's the plan.
I keep saying I'm going to work out, and then I just end up choosing beer and wine and tacos and watching football, and so it just never happens. But I do need to get back on the workout train. My wife's been pushing me quite a bit. She's a pretty dedicated health enthusiast, and so she's been trying to get me back on the train. And I'm just like, I'm just going to go watch some film and drink some scotch or hang out in the office. Yeah, tonight, speaking of scotch, I'm drinking some scotch, some Glenfiddich tonight. So I decided to go neat, skip the wine tonight, skip the beer, and just going to go with some scotch. So I figured we're talking NFC. Might as well drink some scotch and dig through some of these teams that are battling my Niners. So let's kick it off. Let's just jump into it tonight. Dallas Cowboys line tonight, 10.5. Last year they won 12-5. So their schedule this year includes New York Giants at home, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington football team, Chicago Bears, Cincinnati Bengals, Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, the Colts, the Buccaneers, and away games include, of course, the Giants, the Eagles, the Washington football team, Green Bay Packers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Los Angeles Rams, Minnesota Vikings, and the Tennessee Titans. Lines at 10.5. The under is -115. The over is -105. Which side do you like more?
I'm going to go under here. It feels like the Cowboys overachieved last year. I mean, they did get lucky. I believe they went 6-0 in division. But you're talking to me like it's a declining team. Your offensive line is declining. You traded away Amari Cooper. You lost Randy Gregory. You lost Connor Williams. I mean, it wasn't a great offseason for Dallas. And I feel like Mike McCarthy, he's going to be on a hot seat this year. That's going to be added pressure for them. It feels like just making the playoffs isn't going to be good enough for them, that they need to get somewhere. So you're talking, I don't know, do they need to get to the NFC title game for McCarthy to be safe? And I don't even know if McCarthy being back in Dallas is actually good for the Cowboys. So I don't have a lot of confidence in this particular team. I think the division will probably be a little bit better. So 10 wins sounds about right, 9-10.
So they have picked 24 in the draft. Most of us assume they're going to go offensive line after their troubles there this offseason and throughout last year. But would it be a surprise to you if they took, a wide receiver in this draft after losing Amari Cooper, having Gallup probably start the season either on the pup or, limited at the very best? What is your take for them in the draft, and how do you think that they attack their troubles?
Wouldn't be a surprise at all. If anything, you give Jerry Jones credit. It seems like every year they're in a draft and they actually make generally pretty good decisions. Like all these guys will fall into their laps and they're just like, you remember when they didn't really necessarily need CeeDee Lamb that year, but there he was. So they're just like, well, let's just take him. And that worked out great. So you could easily see Treylon Burks, any of those wide receivers that could slip down into the bottom part of the first round could easily be there for them. And that might give them a little bit more decisions. It's going to be all about, I guess, how they have the offensive lineman graded for them, because after about the top 5 receivers, there's a little bit of a gap. You can probably wait until the middle or end of the second round to kind of target that. Where in my personal mock, I had them taking Zion Johnson, which to me made the most sense. He's versatile. He fits right into their system, and he can take over as a starter right away. And, that was me looking at offensive line. But in that particular scenario, in my personal mock, Treylon Burks and those other guys weren't there. So it kind of made that decision a little bit easier for me.
Okay. 10.5 seems pretty steep for this offense. I agree with you. They've had just a lot of troubles this offseason. Not a good offseason for them. I was not crazy about the Amari Cooper, trade. I understand the reasoning, the contract being, the biggest issue. But that being said, you leave yourself pretty vulnerable at the wide receiver position. I liked that they, were able to get Schultz in for another year. We'll probably see Pollard used more inside the passing game as well. Zeke will still have his role, even if people think he's washed. He's still, one of the highest paid running backs in the league, and he's going to have a role in this offense. So 10.5 seems a little steep. I'm going to say under as well. Philadelphia Eagles come in at 8.5 as the line. Under is -110, over -110. So pretty even here. Which side are you taking for the Eagles?
That's such a good line. They were 9-8 last year, kind of a surprise playoff team for all of us. We didn't think that Nick Sirianni would actually get them to rebound so quickly, but he did, and he's a pretty good coach. And now they're walking into a pretty good situation where they actually have flexibility with 2 first-round picks there in the middle, and that's after they traded. They've got flexibility. They could go wide receiver. They could go defensive line. They could do pretty much anything they want here. As a matter of fact, I had a mock draft where I had them taking quarterback, but that was kind of like me kind of predicting a trade, which I typically don't like to do with mock drafts. But they signed Hassan Reddick, which was a crucial need for them. They were 31st sacks last year, so that's my guess is where they're going to concentrate on. Oh man, that's a pretty good line. So we're going to have Dallas decline. So let's say, man, 8.5. Like I said, it's such a good line. I don't know, man. It's a line I would avoid, but let's just say they win 9 games again. So I'm going to very hesitantly say over for them.
I'm going to take the under. I do agree. It's a great line. Had the number been, 9, I would be taking the under as well, but 8, taking the under probably. So for me, I think they're, an 8-win team, and I take a push at 8, but I just think that this whole division just has troubles. It seems like every single year. Dallas always seems to be usually like one step ahead of most of these teams. But this year with the troubles they're having, the Eagles might be a better football team, but I could see this entire division being like 7, 8, 9 wins, like everybody, right? They're going to probably 50-50 in conference and then have their troubles throughout the rest of their games. I mean, their schedule includes Dallas at home, Giants at home, Washington football team at home, Green Bay at home, Jaguars at home, Vikings at home, Saints at home, Steelers at home, Titans at home. Dallas Cowboys away, Giants away, football team away, Cardinals away, Bears, Lions, Texans, and Colts away. So it's not an easy schedule by any means, but it's also not a very difficult schedule. So it's going to be pretty close 500 team here. So I think this is an outstanding line. I'm avoiding it on the betting sheet. I'm not betting live on this at all, but I just don't feel confident in the Eagles winning 9 games here in 2022. Washington football team, 7.5 is the line. Over is -120, under +100. Which side are you liking on this side?
I don't know. I mean, you just mentioned the division. So, I mean, you look at it, the grand scheme of things, is the NFC East actually the second worst division in football? If you look at it, it's kind of mediocre. I mean, it ain't AFC South bad. Here in my hometown, check out that wrapped up for a while here, but I don't know, man. NFC East is kind of weak. I mean, this is one of them weird, wide open divisions where you wouldn't really be shocked to see 3 of the 4 teams kind of win. The Giants are in a rebuild. We'll get to them in a minute. But here on Washington, so 7 wins last year, and that was kind of a disappointment. We saw their defense kind of take a step back, and there were issues at quarterback for them. And you know what? We may still have issues at quarterback. I mean, they traded quite a bit of capital and are paying a huge salary for Carson Wentz, but is he really that much better than Taylor Heineke? I don't know. I scratch my head. I like
I did a post on that and people attacked me, but numbers side by side. I remember I think you did something too, and I think you had cherry picked some numbers, but I don't think they're that much different, quite frankly. And
you know what somebody juxtaposed the other day? They did the career stats of Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. It's the same guy. Their stats are almost identical. Their quarterback rating is within like 1 point of each other, and everything else lines up brilliantly. And I never would have thought that, but when you think about it,
what about hand size? What's the hand size?
That I don't remember anymore. Man, once I move on from 1 year to the other, all that stuff goes away. I don't have the mental capacity to remember all that stuff from years past. But the thing is, I thought Carson Wentz was great until he shredded his knee. Since then, he's just been a different player. And
he was actually the front runner for MVP that year. And
he was great. I had him. I rostered him everywhere that year, and I was doing just fantastic. And then most of those teams fell apart. Right in the fantasy playoffs. That's just the way it goes sometimes.
I remember the play. It was that, short and goal, and he just tried to extend over the goal, and just that knee just gave out on him.
If I'm not mistaken, he stayed in for a play afterwards, right?
He did. Yeah.
Which gave us a little confidence, like, hey, maybe it's not that bad. It looked bad, but maybe we thought, hey, maybe he'll be now.
Well, he's never been one to, not play tough or not play with his heart. It's just always made bad decisions, right? And here he is, after that injury. And I agree with you. He has not been the same quarterback. It seems to have taken a step off, per se. So Washington football team for me, oh man, another good line here. I'm going to say under again. I think they're a 7-win team, 7-10 again, right? That's what they went last year. I think we're going to see it the same. I just don't have a lot of faith inside this offense. I don't think that they're going to utilize the players they have correctly. I think that Gibson should be utilized a lot more. I just don't see it happening with them re-signing McKissick. And we don't know what's happening with Logan Thomas right now, right? And everything else inside this offense. So I'm going to say 7-win team, and I'm going to take the under also because I like the juice plus 100 there. So that's a better odds in my favor. So I'm going to take the gamble, risk it for the biscuit, and go for the plus 100. New York Giants, 7 even is the line, under minus 110, over minus 110. What are you thinking here?
7. Wow. 4-win team last year in the middle of a complete rebuild. Now they played, you could argue that they played hard, but wow. I intentionally did not want to look at the lines because I wanted it to be kind of spontaneous here tonight, but I'm really surprised that they're thinking the Giants are going to improve by 3 games. You still got Daniel Jones as your quarterback. Now I understand you're doing a complete rebuild. I'm actually kind of excited to see what Joe Shane and Brian Daboll can do, especially with 2 top 10 picks. It's going to be really, really interesting, but I think it seems, unrealistic to expect them to increase by 3 games, even though I think they should be better. And, let's face it, this is not exactly the best division. We just talked about that a couple minutes ago. Under, I just can't see the Giants winning 8 games to hit it over.
Yeah, these are some pretty damn good lines. Dallas is the only real outlier to me on the spread. You look at they have 2 top 7 picks, so they have pick 7, pick 5. Dable's a big plus for me. I think that alone is a game and a half, 2 games. I think the picks probably add another game. Oh man, this is another line I'm probably avoiding. I'm gonna you know what? I'm gonna take the over here. I think Dable's gonna get creative. Probably if Barkley stays, he's going to utilize him correctly.
Right, so you think the Giants can be contenders?
I think that they could be contenders in this division. I don't think anyone in this division is going to do much outside of the NFC East. But I think this is another one and done year for whoever makes the playoffs. But I think that it out of the rest of the teams here, I think that you have another year with Daniel Dimes and Golladay. I always like to say year 2 with the connections usually kind of take a step forward. So I think that with Dable and the creativeness and the offense and having the 2 top 7 picks, I could see this being an 8-win team, but I'm not confident in it. But I think if I'm going to gamble on it, I am going to take the over on 7.
Yeah, it can't get any worse for Kenny Golladay, that's for sure.
Yeah,
my hesitancy with the Giants is Daniel Jones. I don't know how he's going to fit into what Daboll likes to do as an offensive coordinator. As a play caller, I'm interested because, like I said, I think the Giants are doing it right. I think they hired a smart coach with their GM. I think the 2 of them on the same page is going to be something really, really interesting. And talk about a quick rebuild with two 2 first rounders. You said top 7. That's how you can get things done quickly. I forgot about Barkley, which is not surprising considering he missed pretty much. Well, he was pretty much absent for most of us anyway. But they could bounce back. But I don't have much confidence in Daniel Jones. So I like the under better. But I'm interested. Giants, they won't be an embarrassment like they were last year.
So if you don't have confidence in Daniel Jones, would you mock them with a quarterback, or are you going to say they're going to address other needs?
No, I think it's a new regime. They've got plenty of leverage. No one's expecting them to turn it around and be contenders immediately, so they don't have to worry about that. If they're terrible again, you move on from Jones, you get another high pick and a fantastic 2023 draft. It's going to be much deeper and better at quarterback. So no, absolutely not.
Okay, I agree with that statement as well. All right, next we have is the NFC North. Green Bay Packers start here at the line is 11. Over is -125. Under is +105. What are you taking?
It's pretty interesting because the Packers, if I'm not mistaken, they're the only team in football that's won 13-plus games for the last 3 years. It's been a nice little run for them. They're just coming up short in the postseason. But it wasn't the greatest offense for them, in particular for their offense, because now you lost Devontae Adams, you've lost Marquez Valdez-Scantling. It's been 20 years. We talked about before we went on the air. It's been 20 years since the Packers took Javon Walker in the first round, and now all of us are futilely expecting this is the year that Green Bay's finally going to get Aaron Rodgers some weapons. And even I'm buying into that, but mainly only because they have 2 picks. Because if you've been doing some mock drafts, it's hard not to see a really credible pass rusher slip to them in this part of the draft. There's going to be some interesting defenders here. So it may be interesting to see which of their picks they do decide to take a wide receiver. And it'll depend on, who's available and who's been taken before they select. But I do think that they will, in fact, finally take a wide receiver. So, you got Aaron Rodgers back. The contract situation settled with him. Do I think they're going to fall off by 3 games? No, you're pretty much bringing back the staff. You're bringing back Aaron Rodgers. I think that, they're going to dip a little bit, but I'm hoping they take a wide receiver now. And they signed Sammy Watkins today, but don't get excited about that because that guy's been done for a while. Let's say they're a 12-win team, so I'm not 100% confident in it, but I'd take the over on that. I'll believe in Aaron Rodgers still.
Well, let's take a look at their schedule. He's got, of course, the Bears twice, 1 home, 1 away. Detroit twice, 1 home, 1 away. The Vikings twice, 1 away, 1 at home. He's technically an owner of the Bears, as he stated last year. Dallas Cowboys, he has at home. Patriots at home. Giants at home. Jets at home. Rams at home. Titans at home. So it's about, not a easy schedule by any means, but he gets the Jets, the Lions, and the Bears. So I mean, that's pretty easy there. Then you get Dolphins away, Bills away, football team away, Buccaneers away, Eagles away. So it's actually a pretty tough schedule overall. I don't think they get 13 wins again. Devontae Adams is a huge loss. MVS, what the fuck ever. That kid is, I don't understand how he got $10 million a year. That just baffles my mind still. Like I would not be paying that either. So I'd sayonara MVS, get somebody else. Yeah. Sammy Watkins, a much cheaper option, probably does the same thing MVS does, quite frankly, outside of a few games. I think 11 here. I definitely think they're going to address the wide receiver in the draft. We're doing the mock draft here for the Full-Time Fantasy channel. I had Green Bay. I did mock them a wide receiver, pick 22. They also have pick 28. One of those two will definitely be a receiver, I think. I just think that it depends on what position they're going to address first, whether it's offensive tackle or it's going to be wide receiver, because offensive tackle is also a need for them. They, ended up losing, Billy Turner and Lucas Patrick in free agency. So they have a lot of needs in the front line as well. So they're 14th ranked best O-line, the PFF grade that they gave him last year. I don't think it's going to be the same unless they attack that. So I think those are the two needs in the first round, and I think that they'll address them as such. I'm going to take the over and 11. I think worst case scenario, you push it 11 because I don't think the schedule is that tough, and it's really hard to count Aaron Rodgers out any given game. Next up, Minnesota Vikings. The line is 9 over. Sorry, 9. Over is -110. Under is -110. Which side do you like here?
I don't know. You're kicking off a new regime here with Kevin O'Connell. They were 8-9 last year. I do like that they signed Zadarius Smith, which at the same time helped them and it, put the hurting on Green Bay a little bit. But this team, they need to get a little bit better at the secondary and all that. And maybe there's some growing pains going through the new staff and all that. So 9. So they're saying they're a contender above 500. I don't know if they'll be better. So I'll take under 9.
Yeah, 9's tough. I think 8's realistic. Although I really like Justin Jefferson. I'm glad that Cousins stayed. I think a lot of Vikings fans would probably say otherwise, but keep the band together. They've had a pretty dynamic connection so far. I just don't have a lot of faith, though, in 9 wins teams for the Vikings. So I'm going to say under as well. Chicago Bears, this one interests me. 7 is the line. Under -135, over +135. Which side are you taking?
So they're trying to get you to lean under, which is not surprising. Bears really, really interesting because it seemed like they were so awful last year, but they actually were 6-11, and their defense is still actually really, really credible. They had sixth best sack rate last year, and of course now you lost Khalil Mack. That won't help them much. But here's the thing: how do you have your sophomore quarterback throw into a receiving corps? With Mooney, okay, that's fine. He's going to get a whole bunch of targets. We love him as a receiver, but the other guys on their depth chart right now, Equanimeous St. Brown, Byron Pringle, yikes. I have a lot of concerns about how you have a first-year head coach, Matt Eberflus, walking into he's a defensive coach, so I don't think the Bears are going to fall off much defensively. They'll figure that out. If the problem is all on the other side of the ball, I don't know, man. It feels like an under, but if they can figure out just a little bit on offense, it wouldn't shock me to see the Bears actually be a contender, wild card contender. But until I see it play out, I'm going to lean under.
Yeah, it's going to break down to Justin Fields, right? And 1, can he stay healthy? 2, can he take a step forward? He showed some promise down the stretch when he was in. He had some great weeks fantasy-wise, right? They definitely had some improvements on an NFL level. But I think overall, it's a good line. I really do. I think that it's really tough. I agree with you. They don't have the weapons. I mean, Cole Kmet is arguably the number 2 option in this passing game. He saw 17.7%.
And that's a problem.
He saw 17.7% target share in 2021. Are we projecting him for 21, 22, 23% target share here in 2022? Right? It's going to have to happen if they don't add someone in the draft or if they don't get someone else in free agencies at some point between now and or they pick someone up cheap. Something has to give. Like, you can't go into the season with Byron Pringle as your wide receiver 2. So I'm going to take the under on 7, but I think they're going to be a much better fantasy team than they are going to be an NFL team. There is going to be points there because they're probably going to be trailing. They have a running quarterback. They have, really 2 options in the passing game right now, Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. But from a win total standpoint, I'm going to take the under at 7 as well. Detroit Lions, line is 6. Over is -125. Under is +105. Which side do you like?
Thought the line would be about 5.5. So I guess it's a little close. But they played pretty hard for Dan Campbell last year. You got to give them credit.
They're biting off kneecaps.
Well, the biggest problem for them was that their defense. Clearly, they were 29th overall. You got some interesting pieces, on the offense. But so what are they going to do? You got 2 first-round picks. You got an early one. You're not looking at quarterback there. I know some people are trying to mock Malik Willis to them at 2. That's not going to happen. Even if it did, it's not going to matter this year because
so
Malik
pick
Willis,
2 and pick 32.
Right, he's not going to be ready to play. Now their last pick, that's a little bit more feasible for them to take quarterback. Like we hit on the top of the show, Jared Goff, kind of the same guy as Carson Wentz. So he's I don't want to say credible. He's not the worst, but I don't. So you're looking at 3.5 wins last year is what they had, and we're jumping up to 6. I think that everything's moving in the right direction for the Lions. This is, obviously with one of the worst teams in football, which they have been over the last, decades. It's a yet another long-term rebuild project. So patience is in play here, but it seems a bit high. So again, I may have went under. No, I went over on Green Bay. So it's going to be another under for me. I think the Lions can give hope to the fan base. They can actually be a team that's going to put out some interesting fantasy results too, and still be significantly better by winning 5 games over the 3 they won last year. So this is to me, this is the best case scenario where they do almost double their win total. And like I said, they're a lot more relevant, but under 6.
Let me read you the schedule, then you can tell me if that changes your mind at all.
Okay.
They got the Bears at home, Green Bay, Vikings, the Bills, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Eagles, the Seahawks, and the Washington football team. Away, Bears, Packers, the Vikings, the Panthers, Cowboys, the Patriots, the Giants, and the Jets.
Well, just rattle off. You said I had like 5 games where I said that those are probably pretty easy wins. So that's about what I thought. That's about what I just said on their predictions. So.
Yep, I agree with everything you said. I think a 7-win Detroit Lions would be a massive step forward, and I don't think it's possible.
5 wins is a massive step forward in my opinion, but 7 would be like, wow, it's time for a Dan Campbell extension.
Well, plus you look at the juice too. Like under is plus 105, right? So just I like the odds there as well. So I think I'm going to take the under at 6. All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 11.5 under. -110, over -110.
You still
schedule. Let me get the schedule.
Let's hear the schedule. Okay.
Falcons at home, Panthers at home, Saints at home, Ravens, Bengals, Packers, Chiefs, Rams, Seahawks, all at home. Away, Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Cardinals, Browns, Cowboys, Steelers, Niners.
Yeah. That's going to be it's going to be pretty close. They got a couple of the division's pretty desirable at this point.
I was going to say, how bad is this division now?
Yeah, well, we're fixing to get into that. But this is really it's Tom Brady's team. This whole Bruce Arians retiring thing. Let's face it, it was a forced resignation. Tom Brady retired basically to force their hand, and he step aside to go into the office so they can play for Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles, nice guy. And they seem to love him, but he's a defensive guy and didn't exactly, reek of success in his previous tenure as a head coach. So this is really going to be Tom Brady's team, and that might not necessarily be a bad thing. Plus, like I said, you're almost bringing back your entire pretty close to most of the key contributors from your championship team from just 2 seasons ago. They won't be as good as last year, but neither is the line. So what'd you say it is? 11?
Line is going to be 11. Yep.
Let's go over. I think.
Sorry. Yep. 11.5 actually.
Well, my first guess was 12. That's a 12-5 team, which means they take a one step back from last year. Seems like and plus we've been hitting on a bunch of unders. So let's go 1 over. It's not something I have a lot of confidence in, but what I do have a lot of confidence in is Tom Brady. And, he's a guy you just kind of never want to bet against. So 12-5 sounds about right.
Yeah, this division is one of the easiest divisions in football now. Atlanta's a mess. The Panthers are a mess. The Saints could be a mess. You look at the rest of their schedule. The Browns, we don't know what week they're playing them, but they may not have Deshaun Watson, right? That might be another hand me. The Steelers aren't looking like the Steelers that we've seen in the past. I know Tomlin has never had a losing season, but this might be his first season where he has a losing record. The Cardinals, who knows what happens with Murray as of today, right? They're talking about not being able to get a contract done, and he may not play underneath his current contract. So there's a lot of question marks in their schedule that look like they're going to be some pretty easy matchups for them. I can see another 12-win team here for Tampa. Like you said, they went 13-4 last year. So I agree. I think it's going to be an over 11.5 as well. New Orleans Saints line is 8 even, -110 for over. Under is -100. Which side do you like?
I want to say under, and I feel pretty confident in that. They were nine wins last year, so we're only saying Sean Payton was worth 1 win. I have real concerns about Jameis Winston without Sean Payton. I know he was playing really, really well in the half season he played last year, but when you're taking away somebody like Sean Payton, who was one of the best in the league at being an architect of redoing offenses and putting their players in position to succeed and all that, you're losing Sean Payton and you're going to Dennis Allen. 8-28 record as a head coach in this league. That's pretty scary. It's pretty worrisome for me. And not to mention that we're worried about Alvin Kamara. Is he going to get suspended? Is he going to miss 4 games, 6 games? Maybe none, hopefully. But it's not exactly a great receiving core with the weapons around Jameis Winston. I don't know, man. I think the Saints, I think they're going to fall off a little bit. They're lucky that they should have at least 3 guaranteed wins on their schedule with Carolina and Atlanta. But other than that, to me, I like the Saints defense, but it's their offense I'm a little more concerned about. So I feel pretty comfortable in the under for the Saints.
Yeah, looking at their depth chart too, you hit on it briefly. I mean, outside Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas hasn't played football in a year and a half. People forget, right? Wide receiver 2 is going to be Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, who hasn't done much, Kevin White, not to Harris. I mean, this is an ugly depth chart. I mean, your tight end is Taysom Hill right now because they're moving him to tight end. They've already announced it. Adam Troutman is your tight end 2. They're in cap trouble. Jameis Winston's coming off an ACL tear. Andy Dalton is on the roster. Like this is an ugly Saints team, and you hit the hammer on the nail with Dennis Allen. Like I don't have a lot of faith in this team. They went 9-8 last year, and I'd say that they're a much worse team now.
Yep.
So I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna take the under here as well. So I mean that's a pretty firm under for me. So 8 wins does not seem even in the cards for New Orleans Saints. Atlanta Falcons 5 is the line, under -120, over +100. So this team is a mess. I think this is probably going to be the worst team in football in 2022. What is your take on the Falcons in that line?
It'll be a race, it is a race for the Texans as the absolute worst rosters in the NFL right now. And, I wouldn't argue either way. At least the Texans played pretty hard for David Coley last year. The Falcons, again, it's a complete mess. And by trading away Matt Ryan, they were just like, okay, we're done. And, they're clearly starting a rebuild. You're bringing in Arthur Smith over from Tennessee. It's his first season as a head coach. And he's kind of walking into a mess. I like that they signed Marcus Mariota because from a fantasy perspective, I've never given up on him, even though it's pretty clear that, the NFL doesn't really view him as a viable starting quarterback. But heck, I feel more confident in Marcus Mariota than just a handful of teams around the league where, I feel like they're in better shape. But oh man, this receiving core, we thought the Bears were bad. I mean, their number 1 receiver right now is Olamide Zacchaeus.
Olamide Zacchaeus.
Does anyone even know how to pronounce that guy's name?
It could be Auden Tate. We don't know who the number 1 is right now, but
Auden Tate, Frank Darby, Kadero Hodge,
Demir Bird.
Yeah, I mean, God, this is horrible. And the thing is, the Falcons aren't really going to be in a position with the number 8 pick that they can actually take a wide receiver. I mean, I guess they could, but they've got so many needs all over the roster. I don't think they're going to do that. So, yeah. If you had to pick right now who's going to have the number 1 pick in the 2023 draft, I mean, honestly, the Falcons would have to be the -150 favorite to do that.
Okay. I'm gonna collect myself because I can't believe I'm saying this. The Houston Texans have a far better roster and team than the Atlanta Falcons. I really believe that.
I guess you could argue that. I mean, I mean, it's like saying
at least you have. Okay, I like Davis Mills more than Mariota.
Which procedure you would like your dentist to do to you? You know what I mean? It's like
I would rather have Brandon Cooks than all 5 of these wide receivers combined.
For sure.
I'd probably rather have Nico Collins than 4 of these wide receivers combined.
Put it that way. Nico Collins would probably be wide receiver 1 on that roster right now. So.
Marlon Mack isn't that bad. I mean, he came off an Achilles injury, but he looked pretty damn good when he in his limited role last year for the Colts. They have Jonathan Taylor. Why are you going to use Marlon Mack? Right? There's no need for him on that roster. So it was the Mack signing I really like.
Yeah, the Texans are better at quarterback.
Davis Mills actually had a pretty damn good rookie year. I mean, quite frankly, was the best rookie year of all the rookie quarterbacks last year in the 2021 draft class.
Oh, what a disaster that was. Yeah. But
if Davis Mills was inside this draft class in 2022, he's probably the number one prospect, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. So I think Houston has a much better roster than the Falcons. I think that they have a much better chance at finishing higher than 5 wins than the Falcons. And I'm going to take the under on the Falcons at 5 pretty comfortably.
Yeah, we both have 2.
I'm not even going to read the schedule because it doesn't matter.
No.
Panthers are at 6, so not much better in terms of win totals. Under 110, over -110. And their schedule is Falcons at home, Saints, Buccaneers, Cardinals, Browns, Broncos, Lions, Steelers, and the Niners all at home. Away games include the Falcons, the Saints, the Buccaneers, Baltimore, Bengals, Rams, Giants, and Seahawks.
Well, I counted about 4, maybe 5 wins. So it seems like a, pretty certain under for me. I mean, this team, we were talking before we went on the air. It's hard to believe that this team started off 4-0 last year. And Sam Darnold at one time was leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 5 and was a top 10, top 5 fantasy quarterback, which this goes to show sometimes like how crazy fantasy is. But so unfortunately for the Panthers, they're in a position where they have the number 6 pick and then they don't pick again until the 4th round. That's problematic for Matt Rule, who is doing everything he can to try to save his job if he has any say on what they do with their picks. And if you're going to go to war to save your job with Sam Darnold, well, that's kind of a lost cause. So it almost feels like the Panthers are forced to look at quarterback here at 6. Now, I'm sure they'll be really, really interested in trading down. And hopefully they'll have some suitors for that because they could use picks in the 2nd and the 3rd round where they're missing. And you don't really like any of the quarterbacks that high in this particular draft. Yeah. In particular, I mocked them when I put out a mock this week. I gave them Kenny Pickett. I don't feel great about it, but I felt like in this particular position, he's probably the most pro-ready that can help them right now. So I felt like their hand was forced a little bit at 6 to take him. But, if that's what they actually end up doing, then it's already going to kind of be a lost cause for them. If anything, the only thing that could salvage this year for Carolina and for Matt Rule is for them to successfully trade down, hit a home run, and still get a quarterback somehow by trading down, whether it's in the 1st round or the 2nd round, and for some things to go right for them. I just don't see those scenarios playing out. So I think next year, Carolina's going to be walking into a top 5, top 3 pick, and they'll be starting over. And, like I said, it's a good draft for them to start over, but I believe that's what they'll be doing. So it's another easy under for me.
Could you see them moving Christian McCaffrey either during the draft, after the draft? Could you see that being a possibility in order for them to acquire more capital?
Well, there were rumors that they were shopping Christian McCaffrey. And, when you sign even a running back like Christian McCaffrey, who you could argue is generational, but we're starting to see some problems with injuries. They're piling up for him. But when you sign a position, a replacement position like running back, it's such an expensive contract and all that, it can be often debilitating for a roster. And the days, it seems like here recently, like these running backs have started to come back a little bit, like it's becoming more important in fantasy and the contracts. I think the league's fixing to start moving in a really troubling direction for old school guys like myself who grew up with LaDainian Tomlinson and all these power backs and Emmitt Smith that dominated everything. I think we're going to see a lot more teams just realizing, screw this. We're just going to start, spending more draft capital on running backs. We're just going to all use 2 and 3 guys. And when their first contract's up, we'll replace them with somebody else and move on. So
it's a smart thing to do, in my opinion, and invest in your own line.
And it's a problem for us out here who haven't necessarily embraced zero running back draft strategies, becoming more and more wise to do that. In particular, for best ball fans. And Billy, that's your forte. I mean, what's your thoughts on, just real quickly here, not to get too long of a tangent, but as a high stakes best ball guy, what is your strategy on zero running back, especially in like best ball?
So there's a difference between zero. I want to just clear this up. There's a difference between zero running back and hero running back or anchor running back, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. There's a fine line. There's a difference. Like a lot of the winners will go anchor or hero and claim it to be zero. That's not the case. If you draft a running back in the first 5 rounds, that's not zero running back.
Okay.
That's going to be zero. That's going to be anchor or modified, whatever you want to call it. There's a name for it. It's not zero. That being said, I will do enough volume in drafts to where I will, diversify my lineups like a portfolio in stocks to where I have some zero running back builds, some modified builds, some hero running back builds, some, heavy running back builds, you name it. I'll do everything because you're trying to get as many looks as you can, or as diverse of a lineup as you can, to differentiate your own ownership as well as the teams that you have, to force yourself to go different players because of the volume. But that being said, I find myself this year in particular going more wide receiver heavier than I ever have been. Why is that? Because it seems to be the value of running back has been pushed down the draft board so much here in 2022 that you can get players like Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You can get players like Pollard. You can get, some very usable pieces in round 8, 9, and 10. So why am I going to invest, a top 12 pick if I'm not Jonathan Taylor or not Christian McCaffrey in the top 1, 2, 3 picks? Why am I going to invest 2 of my top 2 picks in a running back that has some of the most injury, proneness to the position? And, it's going to be the hardest position in order to make it through a year healthy, when I can grab players of that caliber that late in drafts. Now, that's not always the scenario. This year in particular, there's a lot of talent late at running back. In previous years, I found myself really going running back heavy in drafts. Yep. The first 2, 3 picks, sometimes running backs. Just depends upon how the board falls to me. But in this year in particular, I find myself grabbing receivers early and often.
And the one key thing that both of us kind of hit on, and you really expanded on it, was how that the whole teams viewing running back as a replaceable position, it's not going away, because Look at this draft. This is actually a decent running back class. It's not real deep, but there's a lot of guys that fit really well in today's RPO NFL.
Yep.
But we have Breece Hall, who anyone who's watched any film or seen anything on Breece Hall, he's a 3-down back. He's a really good fit for any kind of offense. He's the kind of guy that could come in and be an RB1 right away, and it wouldn't shock anyone. But look at all the mock drafts out there. You don't see any running backs going in the first round very often. Although I did myself publish one this week with Breece Hall in the first round. It's kind of more of a fun thing. By putting him on the Chiefs, I thought, what the hell? That'd be awesome. Talk about burning down fantasy football. That would be great. For all the CEH believers and Ronald Jones believers that are fighting right now, let's distract them with some Breece Hall to Kansas City and see what happens. It would be fun, but I don't necessarily realistically think that's an option. But, hey, if the Chiefs were there and Andy Reid was like, hey, we could – they've got 2 seconds as well. So they could say like, hey, 5 receivers are already off the board. Let's get a difference maker running back. But again, this strategy, the way that teams are looking at running back, and the days of Zeke Elliott getting these long-term deals, those are afraid that's just going to be gone away. And people enjoy it now because, like I said, I don't think it's changing anytime soon. So I would embrace this whole strategy of don't be too firmly committed to something like 0 RB, whatever. Hey, if a guy slips that should go in the second round, he's still available top of the 4th. Look, do the right thing. Take him. But
all right,
but be prepared to load up on wide receivers early.
All right, tangent over. Last division, NFC West, the best. Rams 10.5. Over is -115. Under is -105. What are you taking?
Oh, a lot of turnover with the Rams, but I believe in Sean McVay. I like some of the signings that they did. They did lose Von Miller and Sebastian Joseph Day and Darius Williams. That's problematic. But I do like that they signed Allen Robinson to take over for Robert Woods, and I have a lot of confidence in Sean McVay as a coach, and they won't rest on our laurels. And I respect that their strategy is always, hey, let's bypass the draft and let's keep going for it. So I'm going to go over. They seem like 11-6 sounds about right. 11-12 wins.
The Rams are always saying F them picks. We don't need picks. We're just going to keep getting people in free agency
I respect that.
And massage our quote unquote salary cap right, every single year. So they seem to always have a way of getting it done. You got to, it's they're magicians.
Smart teams, that's smart teams from GM all the way down. These are smart teams that embraced analytics and outside the box thinking years ago, and they're reaping the rewards for that now.
Had Russell Wilson stay at the Seahawks, I probably would have taken the under on this. But now that you have one of the easier, Seattle's going to be, I think, an easier team this year to beat with Drew Lock at helm currently. I think that changes things a little for me. It's not likely as a 50-50 split and home and away with this team. It's more likely that the Rams sweep this. So I'm going to take the over as well. I like the moves they made. I like Allen Robinson, heading to this team. They still made some moves on defense too by getting Bobby Wagner. So I think that the Rams are going to hit over here. I still think they're I hate to say this because I'm a huge Niner fan, but I think they're probably the best team in this conference still, with the quarterback at helm they have. So I'm going to take the over as well. Cardinals, the line is 9, under -110, over -110. Which side are you favoring?
Complete coin toss, because right now there's a lot of turmoil with Arizona. You have Kyler, he's unhappy. You lost Chandler Jones, you lost Christian Kirk. They re-signed AJ Green today, which is kind of good because they were in a lot of trouble at receiver. But is AJ Green really that integral to them keeping it going? Like I said, I don't have good feelings about this team right now. I know they won 11 games last year, and still a pretty tough division. They're probably 3rd out of 4 teams in this division. So it's a bet I'd stay away from. But with so much turmoil right now and so much uncertainty, and I'm going to lean under on here. I just don't have a lot of confidence in it, though.
I'm going to take the under until I have more clarity on Kyler, too. And I think you hit the hammer on the nail. There's just, on paper, they're not as good of a team. I think that there is a lot of turmoil, like you stated, and the division is very tough, very tough. I mean, Niners and Rams are clear favorites inside the West, so I think the Cardinals are going to run into some troubles this year. Now, if Kyler sits this year, this team might be a 6-win team, right? You could run into that kind of trouble, 5-win team even. This is now they're competing with the likes of the Panthers and Colt
Texas. Colt McCoy's credible, but he's not Kyler. So yeah, for sure.
Next is the Niners. 10 is the line, over -115, under -105. Which side you taking?
You got to lean with your team. I mean, you got to lead with your team.
It's not even a homer pick, but I'm going to take the over. And Jody's laughing because he's like, it's such a homer pick. I like Trey Lance. I think that he has a dynamic to him that will help this offense. Now, if Debo leaves, I take the under. If he stays, I'm gonna stay with the over because Debo adds that dynamic that nobody else can really add to a team. Right? He is a yards after catch monster. He creates mismatches. Trey Lance is not going to be able to do that on his own. He's a raw talent, right? He has the legs, he has the arm, but he's very raw at the position. So I don't think that he's going to be someone who's going to be able to take a team on his shoulders and lead him down, right? I think he's going to have to rely on players like Debo. He's going to have to rely on players like Kittle. He's going to have to rely on the run game. And I think that, in fantasy terms, the upside's there for Trey Lance, but as an NFL quarterback, I'm not sure he's quite ready, to be honest with you. So I think this is going to break down the creativeness of the Shanahan and the creativeness of the Niners. And it's going to, be 100% on coaching and scheme in order for them to hit this mark. But I think it's a possibility. And I like the team as a whole on paper, offense and defense, but Debo leaves, it changes things for me.
Well, I think you did a great job of hitting on the points that I was going to make about San Francisco. And I don't see how a team that should fancy itself a legitimate, serious contender, especially on the way they ended last season and made it as far as they made it, that a lot of us didn't see that coming. I don't see how you let Debo get away. And if he's anything, he's their most valuable player on offense, especially if, and the biggest note that I wrote down for San Francisco was questions at QB.
Yep.
I love Trey Lance just as much as everyone else last year, and I still have a lot of confidence in his ability. And I think that Kyle Shanahan has proven time after time to be one of the more brilliant scheme developers and play callers in the league. I think he can come up with a way to make this offense work and all that. And the thing is he going to be the guy? Because if they don't move Jimmy Garoppolo and this summer gets and it gets obvious that despite the fact that he's still on the roster and they're still paying both of them, that Jimmy's completely outplaying Trey Lance. Listen, it's hard to win in the NFL. The windows to compete, contend, especially in a division like this, are very small. Can Shanahan really afford to, to prove, hey, we've got to pay off the draft capital that we spent to move up for Trey Lance? If Jimmy Garoppolo legitimately gives the Niners a better chance to win now. I don't know about that. That's why I have the biggest questions. That said, as a team overall, I like them. Love the staff. Love the front office of San Francisco. So I like the over on them as well.
Yeah, the key is Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they're going to have to cut him though. There's no way that you run in a 26, almost $27 million cap hit where he can be cut at $1.5 million. So do they cut him and re-sign him? Something similar that could happen. Do they trade him? Doesn't seem like anyone's interested.
Creative ways around the salary cap, as you just hit on about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I get that. He's going to have to be willing to as well, right? So that's the key: is he willing to be creative, allow them to get creative with that schedule, knowing that his job is going to be replaced, right? That's I think is the key. But the win total breaks down to Debo. Full 100% agree. Last team in the NFC West is going to be Seattle Seahawks. The line is at 6. Over is -120. Under is +100. Which side do you like?
Probably going to go under on this one. You're talking about a complete and total rebuild. Right now, they're talking about Drew Lock being their starting quarterback, which sounds problematic. I'm actually kind of surprised that Pete Carroll seemingly is at his advanced age, seemingly seems to be on board with complete and total rebuild. Now, overall, they've proven themselves to be time after time, pretty smart franchise when it comes to turning things around and to being a little bit better than we're expecting them. But right now, you're in a situation where they have nothing at quarterback, and with the number 9 pick, I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to find that quarterback in the first round this year. They have a lot of needs all over the roster, but the only quarterback that we're seeing mocked that high is Malik Willis, and that's an upside guy. Most of us don't think Malik Willis is necessarily going to be ready to play this year. So it doesn't do Seattle any good for this year. So it might benefit them to go ahead and embrace Operation Tank and just be like, hey, it might be fun. Like, some of us in fantasy football, I'm typically a win now guy. I've seen way too many dynasty leagues that I've joined dissipate after 3 or 4 years, and it's really frustrating. So I usually go for it, but it might be fun to actually embrace the tank as a fantasy manager, and maybe Seattle thinks the same thing. Hey, let's actually, take on a new challenge. Let's just blow it all up and see what we can do. And again, the third time I'll bring this up. Next year's draft looks really good, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Seahawks to have a top 5 pick and embrace the tank and start it all over again. Bring back the new Legion of Boom too.
I'm going to take the under as well. 6 for this team in a rebuild is a lot. I think they do take a quarterback here with their number 1 pick. What do they pick? 9, pick 8, something like that. I just lost it. I had pulled
they're
up.
At 9.
Pick 9. Yeah. So pick 9. They probably do take Willis, quite frankly, and then they develop him for this year and then move forward, with him. And if they have another tank year, then they might even take another one next year. Who knows?
Yeah, no problem with them taking Malik Willis. I'm overall, I'm really, really intrigued by his skill set, but he's not going to do him any help this year, which really just helps our undercase for that if that's what they end up doing.
Well, that's it for our NFC win totals. Jody, always a pleasure, buddy. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk some more football. We'll drink some more beer. We'll hang out. I'm sure we'll start talking rookies in the NFL draft as we get closer because we're about 2 weeks away now. So we got to start gearing up for what teams are in need of where we're mocking people, and then we'll go from there. So nice seeing you as always. If you're not following Jody, make sure to follow him at Jody Smith NFL. You follow me at FF Muzio. Thank you for watching the Full Time Fantasy Podcast, and we'll see you next week.